And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Little League World Series gets started today. Everyone has heard about the bunk bed incident. We're going to talk about what's happening around that. Liz Cheyney lost last night, conceded defeat. We're going to talk about where she's at, the next steps, and then we might hit a milestone as a collective population. We're going to talk about whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing. So a lot going on today. Before we get started, Mark, how are you feeling?
I just put my microphone back on.
I saw that.
So I'm good. I'm good.
It helps. It doesn't hurt.
I am good. I had it on, but then I left the room, so I took it off and I forgot to put it back on. I was going to say, I feel good. I hopped on the exercise bike last night for the first time in a while. I feel like
good for you.
Do you? Well, see, you're not. I've ridden a lot outside because it's summer.
Yep.
It just, even if you're really going, to me, it just doesn't feel like the same workout because I just don't. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
And it's hot, so it's not like you're not sweating when you get home. But something about, I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, but
I don't think you're wrong. I think there's a psychology to whatever it is you're doing when you work out. And how much you get out of it is really like the psychology of how good you're feeling.
And I think you're right, because when I ride outside, it's more like enjoyable. Yes. Because you're seeing, so it feels like, I guess, like inside this is just a workout because I'm just sitting here going nowhere watching TV.
Yeah.
But when I used to run, I felt like that was a workout. That was outside. It's weird. I don't know. But exercise bike, sweating it out. I'll tell you what else. I'm flipping through the channels. There was not a lot on. I couldn't get the Oriole game for some reason. There was an issue with the channel.
Okay.
I stopped on Brokeback Mountain for like 20 minutes. Okay. Have you seen Brokeback?
I have. I've seen it twice. I saw it when I was a kid when it first came out. I was probably in high school, which then there's a little bit of like a taboo to it. And then I watched it one other time. I believe it was after what's his name passed away. Heath Ledger had passed away, and I remember I watched The Patriot again, I watched Brokeback Mountain again, and there was one other one. I went on like a Ledger, tribute watch.
Did you watch Knight's Tale?
Well, I had. That was not one of them, but I've seen Knight's Tale numerous times.
So here's my immediate take back from Brokeback.
Okay.
The fact that guy who played, I can't even remember his name. I saw Enos.
Okay.
Was the Joker.
Yeah.
He was such a talent that I think time has a little bit, his early demise has, we've forgotten a little bit just how talented he was.
That's interesting because I feel like most of the time people think it works the opposite way.
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's one of the things that when I'm watching this, I was like, that's the guy who played the Joker.
Well, what was funny?
He is so good.
Well, what's funny about people, because Heath Ledger was a good-looking guy. And what's funny about that is, like, the younger you are, I think, like, not that he got, like, stereotype casted, but, like, I don't know. Like, he did A Knight's Tale. He did, was it Not Another Teen Movie? The one that made fun of it. But
didn't he do, like, How to Lose a Guy in 10?
That was Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, then which?
Doesn't matter. The point that I'm making is, like,
he was the good-looking guy.
He was a good-looking guy, and I think sometimes it takes a second for people to realize, like, oh, he's also really
like Brad Pitt,
a little bit, yeah. And it's like, and Heath Ledger was really, really good at it. So I feel like by the time we realized it, it was done. It was over.
Okay, so then here's my next question as I'm watching, because I rode the bike for 25 minutes. It's not like I did a marathon. So in flipping through the channels, maybe I only saw 15 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
I wonder if you would have to ask, I think, gay men. Did you see any, because I just didn't buy it. I did not buy that him and Jake Gyllenhaal were in love.
The relationship.
Didn't get it all. And in some movie, like, did you ever see Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of came through the screen at me, like these two can't keep their hands off each other. And maybe it's...
I think that says a lot to do with, like, a preconceived notion of, depending on our personality or our likes, what we are able to
and that's
believe
my
in
question.
yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that prohibits you more than maybe another viewer, if that made sense.
So that would be because it's one of the things in all movies when you have a love interest, if you buy it or if you don't.
Okay.
So while I was watching this, and again, my first thought is like Ledger's unbelievably talented guy, was an unbelievably talented guy. I wonder if this worked, because at the time, how is it 20 years old?
Oh, I would say it's at least 20 years old.
At the time, it was so, I don't want to say risque, but risque is probably the right word, and groundbreaking, or however you want to say it.
2005, so we're coming up on
it's almost 20 years.
Almost 18 years old.
I wonder if, and that's how the straight community saw it. I wonder how the gay community saw it.
Yeah, we'd have to ask somebody.
If they were like, it didn't work for us.
Yeah. Or
if it was, would it have, now if it's Barney Stinson, who's Neil Patrick Harris, or somebody that's my question.
Yeah,
that's my philosophical question to you, rhetorical question to you, because I know you can't help me with it.
No, I can't. I do think it does change your perspective of how you watch it, without a doubt, though. I think there are certain movies that I've watched before where I go, this person would have a completely different viewpoint of this movie than I would. And this is one of them. Like, I know when I'm watching it, I'm seeing probably a different movie than other people.
Yes. And if you actually know of anyone who didn't like A Knight's Tale, do you just unfriend them in the moment? Is that just like...
It's possible. Do you remember Black Knight? So there was like a string of comedies.
It was Martin.
It was Martin Lawrence.
I didn't see it.
There was like this string of comedies where everybody had to go back in time to be like a knight. There was like this 2-3 year span. So A Knight's Tale and a Black Knight were like just on repeat for a while.
Is Black Knight good?
I loved Black Knight. It's not, to say it's good is maybe an overstatement, but to say I loved it is
it's not. Entertaining.
At the time, the age I was at, Black Knight was hilarious.
So I should or should not check it out.
I think it's worth it one time.
One time, just to say you did it.
Little League World Series opener today. I had the schedule up, then I started scanning around. Latin America versus the Caribbean at 1:00 today. Do I want to say weather permitting? I know it's supposed to rain. I haven't looked at the radar lately.
Is it the Caribbean or the Caribbean?
How do you want to say it? I would say, if I wasn't thinking about it, I would say Latin America is playing the Caribbean on ESPN tonight.
See, I think it is the Caribbean. I think it's like Creek and Crick.
Okay.
I think it is the Caribbean.
Okay.
But it's not Pirates of the Caribbean. It's always Pirates of the Caribbean.
Maybe. Southeast versus New England, game 2, 3 p.m. Australia, who you got to talk to some of them during the parade, they're going to play Canada at 5:00. That is like the accent, like duel off right there.
That is an interesting. And you would think. See, I just look at it. I see some of these foreign teams as like, are you really going to win? Like, is Europe really going to win a game? Because they don't play baseball in Europe unless it's an Air Force base or something. And they're all American kids.
Most of the Europe teams end up being,
I think so,
somewhat American.
I think Australia versus Canada, each team has a shot.
Okay.
Because I think it's a lesser sport. Well, Canada, weather-wise, there's just smaller baseball season, but they're pumping some players out. So that's an interesting matchup.
West versus Northwest is a 7 p.m. game tonight as well.
West is Hawaii, right? Isn't Hawaii?
West should be Hawaii. Hawaii's definitely in it. Should be West.
And then Northwest is the Washington team, the one that won on the foul ball that wasn't foul.
The Hawaiian coach is, I don't know if you've gotten to see like clips, and obviously I don't want to say some of this stuff gets overplayed because like there's only it's not like you have a season's worth of footage of these teams, right? So they kind of replay the footage from the previous 2 games.
Right.
The Hawaiian coach is just great. His demeanor and his calmness and just like he has a way of being blunt to them without being like overbearing or like demanding. It's just kind of like, hey, like this is what it is. Let's go. And I really, if you haven't seen the clips of them yet, you need to look it up.
So that's who you're rooting for. You're rooting for Hawaii over Pennsylvania.
I have a soft spot for Hawaii.
Horrible, horrible Pennsylvania.
You think so? I have a soft spot for Hawaii just because of their coach being here before, and I know kind of what he represents.
We talked about this the other day, and again, I think it's the Washington team, the ground ball down third. If you haven't seen the clip, third base umpire put his hands up, which means foul.
Brutal.
It was the home plate umpire's call. The home plate umpire, they reviewed it, said the ball was fair. The kid scored anyway.
The whole thing was brutal.
Scored on a foul ball, and that was it. Now, he would have scored anyway because it was ground ball down the line. The kid was unsafe. He would have scored. It's just the whole mechanics of the call, and it's almost like an inadvertent whistle, except baseball doesn't have whistles. One of the things that we see every year, and the volunteerism and the amateurism are part of the fabric that make Little League great.
Okay.
We are reminded every year how good the professional umpires are by watching these amateur umpires with instant replay and with television monitors and like, oh, they missed that. Oh, they missed that. Oh, they missed that.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is hard.
Yes.
And I've umpired a bunch of Little League games. It is not that easy, but I feel for some of these guys that this is what they've done all their lives, and now it's an honor to be picked for these games. Like I was telling you when I saw girls softball, I saw like 2 batters of a girls softball game flipping through the channels, and a girl was out at first by a step.
Yeah.
But it was a short hop throw, and the short hop threw the umpire off, and he called it. And they kept showing a replay, and it was almost like the commentators are looking for a reason. Is there a juggle? No. Foot up? No. She's really out.
It's
tough. It is tough.
It's really, really tough. And like you said, the volunteer aspect of it, like these, like, correct me if I'm wrong, the umpires are not getting paid.
None. No.
So it is that fine line between, like, there's so much money involved and there's such a weight on what's happening on the field. But then to act as if like a wrong call is okay because they're volunteer, how you balance those two things I think is a challenge. It's difficult.
It is a challenge. Yes.
It is. I agree with you. The incident that everyone's talking about today, this was actually, I don't want to say this was your idea to talk about it, but I was surprised. This was not something I thought you were going to bring up to me. Not that I thought we would avoid. I don't know. I didn't think we would avoid it. I just wasn't really sure how we would go about talking about it. Just in case anybody lives under a rock here and they haven't heard yet, Little League World Series player seriously injured after falling from his bunk bed. Little League International said the boy sustained an injury within his dormitory complex on Monday morning. He was transported to Geisinger. The 12-year-old player, his name is Easton. I want to make sure I have his last name right. Easton Oliverson from Utah's Snow Canyon Little League. He sustained an injury. There was surgery done. He goes by the nickname Tank. Numerous accounts on Facebook and Instagram have linked to Venmo to try to help out with the costs for his family. There is a number of things to go on this. I'll let you start.
Well, I just say I was talking to Jerry before you got here, and obviously it's a tragic situation, and he seems to be improving. And the report I read, I think one of the coaches reported it, that the doctor is like cautiously optimistic. But I just hope in this world of, that Little League doesn't get beat up for this, that there are bunk beds, because there have been bunk beds there for 1,000 years. And Jerry and I were talking about literally, I said there have been thousands of kids who slept in those bunk beds. Mm-hmm. And he said probably tens of thousands.
Yes.
And I said, when I went to college my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, there were 2 of us in a room and there were bunk beds. Mm. And in boys' dorms, girls' dorms, there were bunk beds everywhere. So we even had kids who slept in lofts, even when they didn't need bunk beds. Did you have those that the loft went up and then the desk went underneath?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't personally.
But I knew kids that did.
Yeah, you could pick and choose if you wanted to keep the set or not.
So, I mean, it's a tragic accident. I'm sure there are a percentage of people out there who are saying, I can't believe Little League have bunk beds. That's so dangerous. I think history's proven they're not dangerous.
No.
And it was a terrible accident. And now I know we've talked about they've reacted, they're adjusting. I think they kind of had to or needed to.
So I have the exact statement from Kevin Fountain, Director of Communications from Little League. Their statement is, since 1992, Little League has used institutional-style bunk beds to offer the most space for the players to enjoy their time in the dorms. While these beds do not have guardrails, Little League is unaware of any serious injuries ever occurring during that period of time. Out of an abundance of caution, Little League has made the decision to remove all bunks from within the dorms and have had each bed frame individually on the floor. So that is the official statement from Little League.
And I think we talked about before we started. I like the phrase "an abundance of caution." You were saying, if in their reaction, do they now make themselves look guilty of creating a dangerous situation? I hope at the end, like, it is sad. It is really sad. I just hope at the end of the day that, you know, there's lots of times people need a villain. To every sad story, they need a villain,
Sure.
And there isn't one here. And that is, I don't know.
No, I have the two things that I was saying. I was kind of saying this to you before the show. I think from a liability standpoint, I think removing the bunk beds makes it look as if, I understand that they're doing it as a precaution, but it does make it look as if you were doing something wrong. And I cannot express enough, like, I'm not usually this black and white. Little League did nothing wrong.
Right.
There was nothing wrong with the beds that they've had. There's nothing wrong if they would have kept the beds in there. Nothing. Zero. The second part of this that I've made the argument to you, because I think the story about Easton is sad. I think the things that people are doing for him is awesome. From every report that I have read, they are praising what Guy Singer was able to do and how they were able to handle it and stabilize him. Was nothing short of a miracle, I think was the exact quote from one of the parents. So that story in itself, I'm going to put over here for a second. Is that fine? Can we put the Easton story over here? The idea that this is a bunk bed problem is lunacy. When you sit down and do the numbers and the math, and the idea that, like, thousands, if not tens of thousands of kids have gone up there and had a great time and have had no issues with a bunk bed. And the moment one kid does, and the moment that the 0.0001 happens, and now we have to react to it and enforce a policy, is it literally irks me.
Well,
like, I literally lose sleep over.
Let me jump in here.
Go ahead.
It's like, I can imagine for the immediacy,
mm-hmm.
and maybe even for the peace of mind
mm-hmm.
of the other kids over there.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
It's like if we go to Ocean City, Maryland,
mm-hmm.
and there's a shark attack, they're shutting the beach down. And it may be the first,
but they're not getting.
It may be the first fatal shark attack in 100 years.
It's a bad analogy because they're not getting rid of the sharks.
But they're not letting you go back in the water
for that day.
And you're like, do you know how many millions of people have been in here and not been eaten by a shark? So we have one that's eaten by a shark and we're shutting it down.
It's a bad analogy.
Yes, they are shutting it down.
It's a bad analogy.
Not forever, but temporarily.
Do you think they'll have the bunk beds back in?
See, and
I don't think they will.
Well, let me answer. Let me give you my answer.
Because
I don't know how much space they have.
Okay.
I think if they have enough room that they can spread them all out on floors, and the kids survive just fine, then I don't think they will.
Okay.
If it is
here's my next question to you. If a kid has fall, because there's no way he's the first kid to fall. There's no way.
Are you sure?
You think he's the first kid to ever fall? I think he's the first kid to sustain a critical injury falling out of them. You don't think anybody at Little League has ever fallen out of their bed? Like, tried to get out in the morning?
Did you know anyone at college who got hurt falling out of a bunk bed?
No, but I know friends that fell out of their bunk bed.
Really?
You don't see, this is where I can't be serious with you. You're telling me that you think over all of this time, no one has ever fallen out of their bunk bed until just this week. Is that what you're saying to me?
While sleeping or while climbing down?
Either.
Oh,
the point I'm making to you is getting out of their bunk. Okay,
but not her.
So this is
not like
correct. So this is the point that I'm trying to make to you is that if, like, how many times did kids or somebody fall out of those beds and nothing happened? Like,
zero.
They didn't remove They didn't remove the beds. They didn't look at it and go like, oh boy, like, I guess we should get rid of these things. It's an overreaction to something that 0.001% of the time happens. And that's the world we live in now, where we make these choices based off of the 0.001 instead of the 99.99.
Just like a shark attack is 0.001, but they're going to shut down the beach to appease the people.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. But you're not, like, to appease the people, you're not actually, like, it's like solving a problem that you and I already agreed doesn't exist because we don't think Little League's liable anyway.
I get it, but at the same point, if they have enough space and it's no different, then why not? Why not spread them out?
Because
if
we already agreed there's not a problem.
But there's not a problem with them on the floor either.
There isn't.
There's not a problem either way.
There isn't.
I mean, this would be like saying someone who drove in a car until they were 60 years old and there are no seatbelt laws. And they're like, and now the seatbelt law comes into effect and they say, now you have to wear your seatbelt. And the person says, well, I've been driving for 45 years and I'm obviously alive this long. So why do I have to wear a seatbelt now? And they say, well, just because it's safer. Yes, you probably could have gone on forever, but we're going to make you wear a seatbelt. So I cannot, I think it's purely a square footage issue is all it is to it.
Okay. I love your analogies because they never
because you don't ever like them.
No, because they never work.
Sure they do. They all work.
You're in a car going 60, 45, 55, 65 miles an hour is very different than being on a bunk bed. Like you're trying to compare the logic and the physics of a moving car to that of a bunk bed.
But if you,
that's all I'm saying.
Thing. If you've driven and you've never needed a seatbelt, and now someone's telling you need a seatbelt,
I always
but your generation
I'm only here because of a seatbelt.
But hold on. Your generation grew up with it. When you talk to your parents, ask your parents how old they got before they started wearing a seatbelt.
I know.
Because
what does that have to do with it?
Because it was forced upon them in the middle of their lives. And when it was forced upon them, they didn't feel like they needed it.
I'm only here because of a seatbelt. To argue the merits of a seatbelt versus a bed on the floor is not. It's just not a fair argument.
It's not the point I was making. It's not. You have to extrapolate further than that. It's just because. Like I agree, there is this much. I would go sleep in the top bunk of a bed tonight. Although every time I was in a bunk bed, I was always on the bottom because I was a football player and I got there first.
Were you ever afraid of getting smushed?
No, never. I did have an incident though. Can I tell this story on the air? My roommate's girlfriend was there.
Okay.
So I slept down the hall in a buddy's room because I thought he went home for a week. He was a football player and I thought he went home for the weekend.
Okay.
So at like 3:00 in the morning, he comes in. He's like, yo, Mark, I'm here. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm half asleep.
Yes.
So I went back into my bunk. But my buddy and his girlfriend who were on the top bunk did not know I was there. Okay. And in the morning, things got very giggly up top. So I grabbed the TV remote and turned the TV on.
Okay.
So the TV, and then all of a sudden I saw his head pop down. He's like, oh, I didn't know you were there. So I saved an awkward moment. But no, I was never afraid I was going to get smushed. I was afraid that my roommate was going to not know I was there.
No, this is just the official statement from Little League that I just put up on the screen. I agree with your sentiment of it's like, there's no harm in taking them down.
Mm-hmm.
I totally get that. It drives me nuts that we live in a world where it's like, I don't think they did anything wrong, but like they should probably take the beds apart. And it's like, well, it can't, like the balance of both doesn't make sense to me. Basically what they did is they adjusted something for what I would argue mathematically, statistically, was a freak accident. Like
Correct.
It's something that hasn't happened before.
Correct.
It was unfortunate that it happened. And
Correct.
Now they're going to make a reaction and a judgment and a decision off of that instead of making the decision reaction based off of the 99.9. And that's the world that we live in now, and it drives me nuts.
Well, I get that, but there's still, when you're talking about the life, and we're talking about life and death, when we're talking about the life of one child, it's worth it to try to get even closer to 100% and not be like, well, 99, whatever's good. When I went through school, probably when you went through school, there was no peanut allergy table.
Sure.
And when I went through lighter elementary, there was never a kid that died of a peanut allergy overdose.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean now as society's moved on that we shouldn't be more aware of it, and having that is even safer.
Yes, but again, it's like, it's awareness versus saying nobody can have nuts. And basically what this is the nobody can have nuts. That's what I'm saying. Like the reaction is always based towards like the 0.1 instead of the 99.9.
No, I would disagree with that.
Mark,
because half the kids don't sleep on the top bunk anyway.
I understand that, but they redid the arrangement based off of what happened. And I can't, just by the way, for the people that are jumping in, we talked about Easton. We wished him the best because I know there are people jumping in.
This is not
complete side note from Easton. We introduced on Facebook.
We're defending Little League.
Yes.
Now
on Facebook and Instagram, you can jump on and you can actually see Venmo accounts that have been set up where you can support Easton. I know people are buying shirts for the Utah team. Apparently, there's going to be proceeds that go towards Easton for that as well. So, side note, we're really kind of just defending Little League, but it's become kind of a fundamental debate between you and I of whether or not they should have to take the bets.
But it started with like Little League did nothing wrong, and I hope, and I'm sure there's a percentage of people who are going to beat up Little League because that's what there's a percentage of people.
Well, can I read? So this is what Keith said that I think is worth reading. I'm a little upset with it being the parents responsible for the medical bills for this tragic innocent. I'm going to assume they meant incident. While under the care of Little League at their facility, I feel they should be reliable for the medical bills. They have insurance for incidents that happen. Sorry, this is just my opinion.
I thought, and I will throw this in from being a guy that was on a local Little League board for years, they do go to the parents' insurance first.
Okay.
But I thought that, and this is everywhere, I thought that kind of above and beyond that there was a policy. I would be surprised that at the Little League World Series that Little League International won't take care of it, or at least that would surprise me.
Something.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you said you had worked over there, correct?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did camps or something like that.
No, I played in camps when I was a kid.
Okay.
But I never worked there.
But you never worked there. Okay. Because I was going to say, I would assume there are I'm assuming before they go in, there's waivers, there's forms.
Oh, I'm sure.
I can't imagine those kids are just walking in there.
No.
Lightly.
No.
So anything else on the incident before I move on from it? Anything that you want to say? Obviously, best of luck to Easton.
Yeah.
Again, on my feed alone, I came across 3 different ways that people could actually reach out and support Easton, whether it was buying shirts. There's links going around for Venmo accounts. So if you're looking for a way to help out, if you're looking for a way to support, there are lots of ways out there if you're looking for it.
No, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, no, it really, really does. Let's go back to, what do you want to roll with here? I had sent you about the Liz Cheyney thing, which I found very, very just kind of fascinating for
the further you delve into it, I say neat. Neat's kind of a corny little word, but there's a lot of branches to this story. Do you know this? I'll ask you this.
Go ahead.
The person who beat her is also female.
Yes.
Before we start,
Harriet Hageman,
something like that. Wyoming is the least populous state in the union, by the way, of all 50 states. Alaska has more people in it than Wyoming.
Yep.
When Liz Cheyney ran in 2020, because this is the House, and you run every 2 years, she got 73% of the vote.
Yeah.
She voted to impeach Trump. She's been on the committee about the January 6th. So of course, Trump has gone after her. All his followers have gone after her. She went from winning. She had 73% of the vote 2 years ago. Now she lost by double digits. The woman who beat her when Trump won in 2016, did I take a picture of this? Because I was reading this in the middle of the night, hated Trump when he was running for president.
Okay.
Quotes were, no, that's not it. That's not it. Did I not take a picture? Mark, you idiot. I did not. Google it. When you can Google, she it was hateful speech about Trump. Now she says he's the greatest president of our lifetime. And again, the part of the issue with politics is you feel like she just changed her tune to win.
Sure.
And they talked about all the other politicians who didn't like Trump up front. Then when he won and they saw how strong his coattails are, now they're like, oh, now I've seen the light. And they all blame the media. They painted him into a bad, now I know the truth and all this stuff. And it's just the dishonesty of politicians that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, she hated them, and now she loves them because in her loving them, she got to win.
So in Cheyney's concession speech, she basically admitted to, like, I could have had this on a platter. All I had to do was basically support Trump and go along with the 2020 election fraud.
Right.
And she says, this was no way I lose. She said I couldn't do that. So right now there's like this thing trending. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but they're calling it like her fight against Trumpism, which I get why. It's a very simplistic way to describe what she's doing. I think for her, she is one of the few, and maybe this is like a not Midwestern, but like a Northwestern, Wyoming, like in the heart of America thing. I think Liz Cheyney really believes she's defending democracy. Like, I think if you
she does.
I think if you spoke to Liz Cheyney, like, she is doing the real work of like defending the country. Whether you agree with her or not, that's her belief. Like, she thinks she's doing that. Did you want to say
Well,
something
I was just going to
on?
say, I think for her career, political career, I don't know where she goes. Is she
she's going to run for president?
Is she kind of the tipping point of a new party?
I don't know.
And how old is 59?
I don't know how old Liz Cheyney is now. She's going to run for president. Whether she runs as a Republican will be interesting. A, because I think that's a dead end, and B, because I don't know the legalities of that. Like, I don't know how easy it would be for her to swap out. So that's the next step. What that looks like and what that means, I don't know.
Does she become, because now she's a person without a party. She's a Republican who hates Trump, and the vast majority of the Republican Party still loves Trump.
I think she's a Republican who can't win president, but I don't think she's lost. I think there's a lot of Republicans that don't hate Liz Cheyney.
I think that her place in American politics, whether it's as a spokesman, whether she, you know how the guy from New Jersey, the governor that was the big guy. Yeah, him. He was on every panel. Okay. Like, is she on every talking head panel? Do we see more of Liz Cheyney now than we've ever seen before? Is she a cabinet position?
I felt like we were seeing a lot of, I mean, maybe you weren't, but I was seeing a lot of Liz Cheyney the last 2 years.
Before January 6th?
No, the last 2 years, a lot of Liz Cheyney.
Yes, because she put her neck out, but I think her career in the House of Representatives may be over and never be coming back. She may never be in Congress again, but whether it's as a public speaker, whether it's as the next George Stephanopoulos, or whether it's as a cabinet position, because she obviously has shown, whether you agree or disagree, that she will stand by her beliefs, even to her own career detriment.
But see, that's why to me, when you say you feel like she doesn't have a party, that surprises me, because I do think that there are people within the Republican Party that like respect that about her. Like, even if they disagree with her, they respect the fact that like she stuck to her guns. Like, there are, like, I know this is going to shock people, there are reasonable Republicans still out there. Like, I know we see like the red MAGA like wave and like the Viking hat storming the Capitol steps. I can assure you there are tons of reasonable Republicans who support Trump, but also don't hate Liz Cheyney.
Isn't it tough to be in both?
I don't know if it is now, because that's how polarizing Trump is. Like, this is the hardest.
But that's the thing. He's polar. He hates Liz Cheyney.
He hates Liz Cheyney. Yes.
So can you like both?
I think you can. You don't think you can like Liz Cheyney and like Donald Trump?
I think it's tough right now, because they hate each other, and they are diamond. Then what do you stand for if you support both of them, other than just red?
Other than just red? Well,
yes.
I've said to you before. I think I'm socially more towards the center, but I think like financially, economically, like everything else, I find myself becoming more and more conservative.
Moralistically,
Even like policy making,
integrity-wise.
even like policy making, I find myself more conservative now today than I ever have ever.
And I get that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is like, let's say Trump ends up being the Republican candidate, okay? And let's say I just hate the Democratic nominee. Like,
Okay.
let's say I just hate them. Like, would I vote for Trump again? Like, I think I would. Like, if I absolutely despise the Democratic nominee, I could bring myself to vote for Trump again, because I was like, you had 4 years to figure this out, and I feel like you guys didn't. So, like, I support Liz Cheyney, and I could also see myself voting for Trump again in 2024, depending on what the Democratic Party does.
And I get that. But
so that's an example of how I could support both candidates.
But I think that's different.
Okay.
Because, for example, like I know lots of people right now who are Democrats,
okay,
who will vote for a potted plant as a Democrat because they want a Democrat in case for the Supreme Court.
Sure.
And that's the only reason. Mm-hmm. So, but that doesn't mean they support the potted plant. That means they have another. So just because if you would vote for Trump because you despise the other guy, it doesn't really mean you support Trump. It's just he's better than the other guy. So I think in the Liz Cheyney, Donald Trump, you can only support one.
Interesting. I don't know. I understand what you're saying. It'd be like rooting for, well, you're saying, like, to put it in your analogies, you're implying it'd be like rooting for the Red Sox and the Yankees. And how could you possibly support both?
You can't.
But maybe you just support the AL. Maybe you're just a huge AL East fan.
Well, that's what I said.
Really,
if you just root red and you're like, I hate the National League, I'm never rooting for the National League, because this is different than a divorce. If people around you get divorced, you can still be friends with him and still be friends with her, and just be like, I like you and I like him. I know you two don't get along. I don't think that there's a place here, because she's talking about integrity and he's trying to destroy what America's about.
Well, this is
he's talking about disloyalty. And
this is the other thing that I think people are going to miss out on, because it's Wyoming. The hardest part about the Electoral College, and even just like the way our states are based, the easiest state to basically railroad mathematically is Wyoming.
Correct.
It is. Like, it's just, you have to convince less people.
It's a good point.
That this is what it takes to. I think there's a lot of states, it would have been much harder to do this to Liz Cheyney. Because I think in other states, there would have been enough reasonable Republicans to just kind of be like, no, like, I know what Liz Cheney's doing right now, but I know what she stands for, and she's the incumbent, and I'm voting for her.
It's a fact. See, I didn't know. I knew up until yesterday that Liz Cheyney was down by double digits. Mm-hmm. I did not know she was losing to a woman. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting too, for just whatever it's worth. That if you were,
I think it had to be a woman though.
Why?
I think if you get somebody that looks the opposite of her, it's harder to convince her supporters to go over.
Oh, okay.
You want somebody that looks as much the part as she did.
Okay.
Because then it's a much easier transition for those people to go.
Because I was going the opposite way. I was thinking psychologically, we want someone. Like, if Liz Cheyney is evil, we want someone totally opposite of Liz.
Because
you might be right.
Because it's not about making Liz Cheyney look evil. It's about how do the people that support Liz Cheyney feel comfortable enough to just kind of trickle over.
It's not that big of a jump. It's a little bit of a slide. I get that. You might be right. That's good. You might be right.
The other thing that I have noted down here, the DCCC, once again, has declined comment on whether or not they financially support it.
What is the DCCC?
It's the Democratic Committee. They do all the funding.
Okay.
They have once again decided to say no comment on whether or not they financially supported Harriet. I want to call her Hageman, but I'm not sure if that's.
I think it's Hageman. You're close.
So they have
basically
come out and said no comment again. We just went through this. I believe it was Virginia. We went through it in another state as well.
I was going to text you. Bill Maher talked about this. Did you see that episode?
I didn't, no.
And he's like, you can't, because just to backtrack, for those people who don't hang on our every word, that the Democrats, in some places at least, are supporting the Trump candidates because they think come real election time.
The 10-second easy way to put it is the number one financial supporter for MAGA candidates, so like super Trump red candidates, is the Democratic committee.
Because they
believe it will be easier
to beat them. And as I don't know, I think we said it. I don't remember. Sometimes I don't remember what we say on the show and off the show. Yeah. But Bill Maher said the same thing. If you, as a Democrat, if you really think that Trump is like, Satan on earth,
right,
and now you're supporting his people, thinking that it's easier for them to win,
right,
like this is a very dangerous place.
Yes.
Because don't you want, because it just happened to, there was another guy that Bill Maher talked about, because it was before the Cheyney thing. In the real world of common sense politics, which doesn't exist there, I think we live in it, but I think I should, not just you and I think normal people live in it, but the political people don't. Don't you just want someone, whether they're your color or the opposite color, who's reasonable and you can work with?
Totally. That should be the goal.
That should be the goal.
Yes.
So the Democrats are hoping that those people lose, because obviously Liz Cheyney is someone, even though she's red, she could win. Like, wouldn't it be better to have Liz Cheyney? Wouldn't it be better to have a good person from the other party in office than a bad person from your party?
Not if you're the Democrats.
You're right. And that, I think most of America would say, yes, let's just put 435 good people in the House who can hammer stuff out, as opposed to, these robots who say, I vote with my party every time.
I said this to some of my friends, like, I'm not knocking the strategy. Like,
it might work.
From a strategic standpoint, if it works, it's ingenious. What I'm knocking is like the verbal hypocrisy of like, we're so like, do the right thing, but then it's like you're just bleeding out these candidates that you could actually work with because you're afraid they might beat you. Like, it's brutal right now.
I totally agree with you.
So they said no comment on that as well. I just wanted to mention that again.
But they did say that.
Say it again.
They did make a comment.
Yeah, just
their comment was no comment.
Yeah, basically, pretty much.
Good for. Do they have a highly paid person write that up?
They might have. I'm sure someone got paid.
Did they have to decide what font to type it in?
Wingdings is what they should have put it in. Chris Christie was the guy you were trying to.
Chris Christie, thank you.
I wish I could take credit for that. But
thank you,
to Heather, for doing that. The last thing here, just a really minor note. At any moment now, I don't know. I don't think it's technically happened yet. But at any moment, the world population will hit 8 billion, which is a pretty, it's a milestone. Whether it's a positive milestone or a negative milestone, I mean, we could debate that or talk about it. One of my favorite comedians, Bill Burr, he starts every show talking about how the world is overpopulated and we need to get rid of some of you. And that's his opening bit for every single show. So yeah, 8 billion, hard to wrap your head around.
I'm just going to spin to this because you mentioned Bill Burr. I saw half hour of a documentary about George Carlin. I think it's on HBO.
It is.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's 3 hours total, a 2-part series.
Did you see the one? I think I saw the very last one.
Okay.
Because I don't know which section I saw, but it seemed like he was old and it was towards the end. And he's talking about, he goes, as a comedian, when I'm up here on stage and things aren't going well, I'm dying up here. I'm dying. He goes, when things are going really well, I'm killing it. So he goes, every time I'm up on stage, it's either me or you.
Right, yeah.
And I thought that was very clever.
Really, really good. So they're never, obviously it's too hard to tell when the exact, who the 8 billionth person.
They don't know? There isn't confetti falling from the.
Impossible to tell, but they said that they do believe it will happen at some point this week. Because the other issue you're going to have too is like you might hit like 7,99999, but then like people die, and so they're like this arc of like. But they said at some point this week will we surpass 8 billion people.
Yes, they can. Yeah, there's no way.
I don't know if it's great.
Oh, it's not.
There was I don't know if you saw Elon Musk made the comment that he thinks.
Did you see he's buying the soccer team?
He says he's buying it. I don't know if he is or not. But yes, I saw Manchester United.
Yes.
He claims he's going to buy. He made the comment that he thinks one of the greatest threats to the planet in the future is the decline of human population.
The decline?
Yes. He says that right now.
What's the rationale?
So after reading about this the last couple of days, most people believe that the maximum, like the top of the bell curve for human population is 10.4, 10.5 billion.
Well, that's what I think.
That's it. That's what you believe. So their argument is like, if you look at the minimum side of that, 9 billion, 9.5 billion. So what their argument is like, we are essentially by 2040 going to be like hitting that peak.
Okay.
After that, population will begin to decline. Then all of a sudden, if you're a company, it's the first time where like, how do you show growth in a declining world economy and a declining world population? So his whole argument is like the structure that we have set up across the globe, the global network, the global economy, it's all based off of this growth of more people, more people, more people, more jobs, more jobs, more jobs, more money, more money, more money. And so the moment that tips officially, he says that is the beginning of the end.
But doesn't with more money come more problems?
That's what he's saying. Well, we're almost at the peak of more money. That's what he's implying. So I don't know. So his whole thing is like, yeah, like underpopulation. He thinks we need to figure out a way to keep going.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, he's doing his job. Has he knocked anyone up lately?
He is doing his job.
He has his own little softball team going on.
I love that you have it out for Elon Musk. It's
like
It's like my favorite side note of this show. It's like your secret hate for Elon Musk.
I don't hate Elon Musk.
It'll be all right.
I'm fascinated by Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Because he's so smart and he's but
no, I'm with you. Selfishly for me, while we're just throwing out some things here to end the show, NCAA football is going to be coming out in July of 2023. The video game is going to be back for the first time since 2014. Very, very near and dear to my heart.
Oh, while you're talking about NCAA football, I've seen this around because I have a daughter that goes to Pitt. Yeah. Preseason polls, Pitt is in it. Penn State is not. Yeah. Penn State fans are unhappy.
Yeah.
I was talking with one. I said we'd still kill Pitt if we played them tomorrow, which may not be untrue. But from the poll, it's like if you go down to the others receiving votes,
yes,
Penn State was like 27 and 28 in the one poll.
So
it's not like
they feel burned after the last 2 years.
I think so.
They feel like Penn State has let them down after getting up into like the top 10, top 5 consecutive years.
Yes. And last year, just the timing of the quarterback injury just killed them.
I was telling you and Carrie about Penn State's new advertisement. They took out a billboard in Pittsburgh. I don't know exactly where it is. There's a billboard in Pittsburgh. It has probably 6 to 8 players like on the board, kind of like in a V formation on the billboard. And they are all the players from Pittsburgh that are on the Penn State roster. And it says from Pittsburgh to Happy Valley. And I think it says Go Nittany Lions.
Do you know, have you talked to Bam lately?
I haven't. I saw Bam at the end of last summer. I did not see him this summer at all.
Okay. I wondered where he was at on the depth chart. How long has he been out?
Because of the COVID stuff, it's hard to tell.
He's got to have.
He's getting up there. I mean, he's probably getting close. He's probably like a COVID junior, COVID senior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what would be neat is there's always this aspect of, well, can these guys get on the field? When you get a local guy that goes to Pitt, and Bam was a defensive end at Loyola.
Yeah.
What is his last name? All I know is
Brima. Bam.
That's
Brima.
right. That's right. But now you're like, well, can he play at Pitt? Well, I don't know. Now Pitt's tops. I think they're 17 in the country. So the world thinks they're good. Mm-hmm. If he can get on the field for a top 20 team, that's really cool. They open at home against West Virginia, which is WVU's an hour and a half from Pitt. Yeah. That will be madness.
Is that still a rivalry?
Yes.
Is it still like as heated as?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're West Virginia, like geographically.
Well, I just knew West Virginia has been down a little bit.
And now they're in the Big 12.
Okay.
So they play out west more. Sure. But it's Pitt, Penn State. Like there's still this, and if you live out there, somewhere in there, you root for one of them because, unless you root for Ohio State or Penn State, but those are the two locals. So, yes, but that's a good way to kick off. See, Penn State kicks off at Purdue. I remember last year, I think they were at Wisconsin because they got that huge win early in the season.
Right.
Purdue's not great, but playing
hard.
at Purdue is a lot different than playing, Toledo.
Oh yeah, not easy. Just wait till they have to open up the season at USC.
When's that?
I'm joking.
Oh, when you're talking about the big and then it's week 3? They're at Auburn.
Yeah.
So they have at Purdue, Cupcake, at Auburn.
Yeah.
If they can get through that,
I don't. It's tough. I've said before, but I think part of Penn State's biggest issue is that it's always early. Like you kind of if you're gonna lose, you kind of want it to be weeks
I get
1 through 4, and then you kind of want to get it rolling. Like if you can lose one game, week 1 through 4, and then win out, I would argue that's better than winning 11 straight and then losing in week 13.
Absolutely. I like Clifford a lot more than everybody else does. I like Franklin a lot more than everybody else does. So when Clifford came back, and I know Clifford's like 30 now, but he's a solid college quarterback. I think he gives them hope.
I don't disagree with that at all. Stephen A. Smith is putting out a memoir. I didn't know if you saw that.
Wow.
Yes.
He's been taking some heat lately.
What is he getting heat for? I will say this. I am for everything I dabble in and everything I hear and watch and all this stuff, my algorithm knows I despise Stephen A. Smith. I go my entire days without seeing a Stephen A. Smith clip, without hearing a Stephen A. Smith soundbite, because my algorithms know I'm just skipping over it.
Well, so here's the 30-second synopsis. Okay. The Lakers hired a new coach.
Yes.
His name is?
Darvin Ham.
Black guy.
Oh.
Russell Westbrook, who played for the Lakers last year, didn't have a great year, was hurt, whatever.
Okay.
Came to the press conference.
Okay.
Now, there's much suspicion that Russell won't be back as a Laker.
Okay.
So basically, Stephen A. came on and said, "Why are you going to the press conference?"
Right.
And it was JJ Redick and some other guy on the panel, and I can't remember, but the other guy was I think a former NBA player. He was black too.
Okay.
And they were like, "What? He's still on the team now,
right?
So he's going to support the team." And the other guy said, he's supporting another black man who was hired as he's just showing support.
Right.
So why is he a bad guy? And and Stephen A. was on the Zoom call, and they're just like, "No, you're out of line here." So then guys like, I think Draymond Green chimed in that "Whoa, they really told you," and Kevin Durant, and him and Durant go back and forth a lot.
Sure.
And they're like, how can you be a champion of the black man when Russell Westbrook goes to a press conference to support a black guy being hired as a Laker coach, and now you're ripping Westbrook for going to the press conference? Regardless of anything else, he's there to support.
Yeah, maybe. I think players are so sensitive.
They're sensitive. There's no doubt about it.
It's crazy. So, and they just don't hear no, especially the good ones. Like the Kevin Durant's and the Draymond Greens. When's the last time you think they heard no? Well, Kevin Durant is hearing no right now because he's demanding a trade.
But there's still, I think there's an aspect. There's so much criticism that these guys take that is unwarranted. Like I remember back,
can I stop you?
Yeah.
Because when you say unwarranted, you're getting if you make $30 million, criticism's coming with it. I don't know anybody.
But it depends.
I don't know anybody in this world who makes 7 digits yearly salaries, and criticism is not part of the game.
No, but
it's not.
Let me give you an example.
The expectation.
I'll give you an example. It's 25 years ago, but it's the first one that comes to mind. Brady Anderson was the leadoff hitter for the Orioles, and he hit 50 home runs one year as the leadoff hitter. Now, the ball was juiced. Was he on steroids? Nobody knows, blah, 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 blah. But he's hitting 50 home runs as a leadoff hitter. But he'd always been a leadoff hitter, and they just kept sending the same lineup. So people started talking, and sports talk shows started talking, he should hit third. He should hit fourth. Okay. We're waiting him hitting first. Or we're wasting him. So he was asked as, an interview with guys just ask questions. Would you rather hit first or would you rather hit third? And he's like, well, I've always been a leadoff hitter. I'd rather hit first.
Sure.
So now he's getting ripped by half of the population because he's being selfish when the manager's never at. It would be one thing if the manager came to him and said, I want you to hit third, and he said, I won't do it. Then you're being selfish. Yes, but when someone asks you a simple question, and now he's getting criticized over something that was just a simple question.
But did he go and sit in the dugout and go, I'm not playing? Because that's what these dudes do now.
No, he
Okay,
didn't.
and that's the point
But
I'm making. That's the difference.
But but he's still getting publicly criticized for something that never happened.
I get that, but I'm not going to, like, again, him getting publicly criticized for something that never happened, I think that's just part of the job. Like, it comes with it.
It is,
You're
but
making millions of dollars,
unfair,
and
you can understand why it's annoying.
Yeah, but that's not what we're discussing. I'm discussing with you why I think if you're making that much money when you sign on the dotted line, if you think you're going to make that much money and society is not going to critique you, then you just don't get it.
But there's a difference.
You don't get it.
There's a difference between being critiqued about something you did or something you didn't do. Like if they said to me, hey, we're ordering Chinese food for lunch. Do you want any? And I said no. And now all of a sudden I'm getting criticized because I didn't want Chinese food?
But it's a critique. Like, he still shows up and does his job.
Correct.
So everything's good. He got his money.
But no, everything's not good because half the city's telling him he's selfish because he won't bat third, but he doesn't make the lineup.
So when I sign the contract for $7 million and I'm like an employee of the city essentially.
No, you're not.
Yes,
you're not an employee of the city.
You don't think when you're a professional athlete that you're not a because where do you think that money's coming from?
The owner.
It's ticket sales. It's people being willing to come and watch you play the sport.
Well,
you're
coming
an employee
from TV.
Of the city.
It's coming from TV.
You're an employee of. Guess who watches it on
Whatever.
TV? Mark?
I disagree with you, but I get
You're an employee of the city. So when you sign on that dotted line, that basically I'm getting 7 figures because the people around me have decided that they want to watch me do something. You're going to get critiqued. That's part of it.
No, I get it.
So here's what I would say.
I get it.
Kudos to him for showing up and doing his job.
But there are fair critiques and unfair critiques.
And not kudos to the athletes of today who aren't showing up to do their job because they're being critiqued.
No, I get it. But
I don't think you do.
There are fair critiques and there are unfair critiques. And critiquing Russell Westbrook for showing up at a press conference, if you're Russell Westbrook, you're like, really? You're criticizing me for this?
Okay, when you say there's a fair critique and an unfair critique, them deciding whether or not he should play bat first or bat third, it doesn't affect his morality. It doesn't affect his ethnicity. It's not ageism. It's not sexism. There's nothing about the debate of whether he bats first or third that is an unfair critique.
But he's being called selfish for something that he had no choice in the matter.
It's just wrong. Then they're just wrong. So you think
but half the town is wrong.
You think half the town is wrong. The other half of the town thinks you're wrong. So it's not an unfair critique.
Why am I wrong? What am I wrong for?
They think it's selfish. You think it's not.
But he wasn't asked the question.
That's not the point. The point that I'm making to you is like you thinking it's a wrong critique does not make it unfair.
Sure it does.
No, it doesn't. There's a difference between a wrong critique and an unfair critique.
You can't.
They didn't make fun of who he was as a person. They didn't call him out for his ethnicity, his morality, his religion. Nothing about the individual.
They called him out for being selfish.
Yes.
But he wasn't given it. The only way you can be selfish is if you're given a choice and you choose me over everyone else. He wasn't given a choice. Okay. There was no choice to be made. And they said bat first and he batted first.
I get it. And I agree with your opinion. But what I'm saying to you is you think their opinion is unfair and it's not. Their opinion isn't unfair or unjust. They think it's selfish of him to bat first instead of third. It's that simple. It's that simple.
But he wasn't given the opportunity to bat third. They just asked his opinion.
Correct. It was just a question.
But because of that question and because of the way he answered the question.
Because of that question, what happened? Did he show up and do his job?
Half the people called him selfish. But if you're him,
oh my God.
But if you're him, you can understand why that's an unfair critique.
He makes 7 figures and he called himself.
Well, he didn't quit, but you can understand why it would be an unfair critique and it would be frustrating.
Is it selfish of him to make 7 digits while people come to watch him play?
No, because the owner's making whatever money.
There you go. Exactly. And people still paid to come watch him play. So everything's okay. Everything's all right. There was nothing unfair about the critique.
No. Okay. All that you said was until the end. It's unfair.
It's not.
It is unfair.
You can say it's wrong. Like you can say, I disagree. I think they're wrong. It's not an unfair critique.
Okay. Let me ask you.
He thought it was selfish that if given the chance to bat third, he would say, you know what? I would prefer to bat first instead.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
Because today's players would have said, I'm not even playing.
Here's my analogy. Tom Brady's contract comes up at the end of this year with Tampa. Okay. Tom Brady leaves Tampa and goes somewhere. Carolina. And the Buccaneer fans come out and say, he's a traitor. He left us.
Yes, they're fans.
Hold on. Tom Brady turns around and says, I asked the Buccaneers for a contract. They wouldn't give me one.
Okay.
So now for them to call him a traitor for leaving when he says, I wasn't offered a contract here, is that an unfair criticism?
It's a wrong criticism.
Which is the same thing. It's
not.
Unfair. It's unfair to call a guy a traitor for leaving when he wasn't allowed to stay.
It's a wrong criticism. They're wrong.
Which is unfair.
It doesn't mean they're unfair because it's not like
it doesn't mean it's unfair.
Because he might have went to Tampa Bay and they might have said, we can only sign you for 20 instead of 30 million. And he would have said, no, like I have to have it. So this is the point I'm making you. Like, it's wrong. Like Tampa didn't give him.
It's unfair.
Tampa didn't.
It's unfair to criticize a guy for something he didn't do.
Oh my gosh, why is that unfair?
Because it's unfair. It is the definition of unfair.
What do you mean to criticize?
If your girlfriend dumps you, and you run into one of her friends, and they're like, "You're a bleepity bleep because you broke her heart."
Okay.
You're like, "She broke up with me."
So
that's unfair.
So just so I understand, what is a fair criticism? Tell me what a fair criticism is.
If they offer Tom Brady a big contract and he leaves and goes somewhere else because for something, or if they go to Brady Anderson and say, we'd like you to bat third, and he's like, I won't do it. I won't do it. And then they say, okay, we're going to leave him at first just because he was going to throw it, and we didn't want him to be psychological. Those are the aspects.
He said, no, I would bat first.
Because he was that's what he wanted to.
He answered the hypothetical.
Correct.
Okay, so people thought the answer to the hypothetical was a selfish answer. Now,
but they
you and I can disagree.
Which would you prefer?
Now, you and I can disagree with that. Like, you and I can be like, that's the wrong opinion. But to say it's an unfair opinion that's not fair. That's not fair.
No, it is wrong.
You don't get totally to decide. Unfair.
You can't. How many more examples do you need?
Dude, you don't get to decide if a fan's opinion of an answer is unfair or not. You can say it's the wrong opinion, but when it doesn't affect
when they call someone selfish and they didn't have a choice to make, it's unfair. It's unfair.
You call me. Do you know what you call me in a day?
Well,
that's worse
they're
than
jokes.
Selfish?
They're jokes.
I'm just saying.
But they're jokes. The fans aren't joking.
And it's baseball.
They're not calling. They're not calling sports talk show to joke.
He's getting $7 million to hit a ball. So I think calling him selfish is fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Okay. The next time I have a cookout, and I say, Jeff, would you like steak or would you like a cheeseburger? And you say, I'd like steak. Okay. And I was like, look at Jeff. We don't even have steak. All we have is cheeseburgers. Yeah. He's such an arrogant, elitist jerk.
Why would I assume there's steak at the cookout?
Because I offered it to you.
Why would I assume that?
So now it's unfair to criticize you and call you elitist because I asked you, would you rather have steak or a cheeseburger? And you said steak. Now I say there are no steaks. I can't criticize you for that.
Your example would be me taking the thing that I already had.
What?
Because he was batting first, and he said, I'd like to continue batting first.
He was.
So it would be like me eating a cheeseburger and then coming back to the grill and you being like, do you want steak? And I'd be like, no, I'll take the cheeseburger. And you were like, are you?
No,
made this
your
delicious
analogy
steak.
sucks.
I made this delicious steak for you, and you don't want it. My
your analogy's stupid.
Analogy makes sense.
Stupid.
That's the problem.
That's stupid. Not only is your analogy stupid, but you're stupid.
You like to make these analogies where you can just throw stuff around. That's an unfair criticism. That I am stupid.
No, I think the audience would agree.
It's unfair, and I'm now no longer going to participate in the show because it's so unfair. That's what I think.
I have a meeting anyway.
Okay, you have to go. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. We will see you guys. You're still around tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we may have a special guest tomorrow, but we got to line him up.
All right, we'll be around tomorrow. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina, and we will see you then.
Later.